Starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. I want to welcome you to our webinar today. We're talking with Bob Cole of Dynamic NAV Addons. We're going to be talking about their product, which is AR and Collection Manager. I know we've had a lot of interest in this webinar. We have a lot of attendees, so we are going to get started here in just a moment. Bob is finalizing his technical part over on his end. I just want to I just want to remind everybody of two things. First of all, we do always record our webinars, so you'll be able to view this recording or show it to somebody else in your organization. It'll be up on our webinar by the end of the day, on our website by the end of the day, and that website is innovia.com. It'll be under the heading of past webinars. Also, if you have any questions, because everybody's automatically muted to cut down on background noise, you can just type them right into the question box. I will be monitoring that for Bob so that he doesn't have to be distracted from his presentation. So any questions you have at any time, just type them right into that box. I'll be monitoring that so that I can get those questions to Bob and I can call them out and get them answered for you. And that is the end of my little housekeeping here. Bob, are we good to go, or do you need another moment for your technical setup there?
I'm just opening the screen right now, and so I guess at this point, while it's opening, let's see. If you want to pass it over, the screen will be opening in a second. It'll take me a couple minutes. In the meantime, I'll discuss the concepts and we can go through it so that we don't waste any time.
Fantastic.
So if we can show my screen. And so now the question is can people see my screen?
Yep, I can see your screen. It's black and it says Windows Server 2012 R2. Is that what we should be seeing? Yep. All right, fantastic.
Yep. And in just a second it will show. Nope, that's paused. There we go. So now we should start seeing some stuff opening up on the left.
Yep, we've got it.
And okay, so AR and Collections Manager has been around for a very long time, over 15 years. And it was originally developed because there was kind of a lack in NAV for an organized fashion to be able to follow up on overdue invoices, other than having simply an aging report, which I haven't ever talked to anybody who's really impressed with using the aging report. Let's see if I can get this out of my way here. Oh, I know how to do that. There. And I need to open that up. So many years ago, I helped get this developed, and basically what it is a contact manager that is specifically designed for follow-up on overdue invoices and managing accounts receivable. The usage of it is extremely simple. It is a very, very simple tool to use. In the past 2 years, we've had a lot of activity and improvements and suggestions for making it more usable on a day-to-day basis, and you'll be able to see some of those. In the allotted time, I can't cover everything, but I'll be more than happy to answer specific questions if they pop up. So the idea is that we have created an ability to create what we call exceptions. An exception is any accounts receivable transaction that doesn't go through the normal process of creation, satisfaction, posting, and disappearance into history. It could be an overdue invoice. It could be an unapplied payment. It could be an unapplied credit memo. It could be one of a lot of different kinds of transactions. It could be something that is a small invoice that the determination has made that it's too small to follow up on unless the customer has multiple small invoices. Then we would be able to follow up on all of them. So there are a number of different kinds of transactions that we generically call exceptions. So what happens is on a daily basis, every time a user goes in, the user is going to update run a protocol called generate and update exceptions. The protocol does two things. First, it looks for any newly overdue invoices or invoices that meet the criteria that in setup, which we'll review, and will be added as a new exception. And the second thing is it looks to see if any payments have been applied against previous collection efforts, so that the system could drop off something that has been paid. I'm sorry I have to go through all of this stuff. It won't take very long. So routinely, you're going to run the generate and update exceptions routine, which will update the list. There's a key to using this, and that is that every time you make contact with a customer, you want to set a next contact date, because you're going to ask them for when payment can be made against the open invoices, and they will tell you. You're going to then mark down whatever they tell you, figures, and let's open this up, and you'll keep track. So you're going to keep track of what it is that they tell you, and then you're going to make arrangements to set up a next contact date. So if, in fact, the customer does what they say they're going to do, and they make the payment on time, the payment will be applied, generate and update exceptions will mark it as having been applied, and it will disappear from the contact list. On the other hand, if they don't do what they say they're going to do, then it will float to the top of the list, and so that you can follow up, open up the event history of all of the contacts so that you can see who you spoke to, what they promised, and all of the other specifics. So it's very, very simple to use. And as soon as it opens up, I will be able to jump into it. Come on, Nav. Oh, I wanted to say no to that. I'm sorry. It will time out, and then I'll open it. It's what happens when you rush. Now, what we've done is add in another option, which I don't know if we're going to have time to discuss too much, but frequently when people use the AR Collections Manager, they also want to use one of our other add-ons called EasyPDF, which we reviewed EasyPDF a few weeks ago, and it allows users to be able to convert documents to PDF attachments. Let's get into, let's see, convert documents to PDF attachments to emails. And this would typically be used in situations where you call up a customer and they tell you that they can't find the invoice, they never received the invoice, the dog ate the invoice, whatever the excuse is that okay, let's try this. And so what we've added is the ability to have a combination of the AR and Collections Manager as well as EasyPDF. And we've added some additional functions that are kind of key. In fact, that's I'm opening up at least I hope I'm opening it up, the database. To be able to, that's not going to open. AR and E, needs to be running. There we go. And so what we've added is the ability to automatically send reminders. Now, one of the things that I've found over the years is that, there we go, that's good, is that reminders are a wonderful thing in the collections world. It allows you to be able to send out an email with what amounts to a customer statement, and particularly for smaller customers, not involve your collections people. And this is something that we've added, is to be able to categorize customers by their relative size to the organization, so that you can take smaller companies and batch send out reminders that may in fact take care of any problems. If we have time, I may be able to go into this, but right now I'm trying to get the AR Collections Manager open so we can review that. And we should be opening up. Let's go NAV. There we go. Now we're showing this in NAV 2016. It's available for pretty much all versions of NAV, including 2017 and back to version 5 and version 4 even. So all versions of NAV have the AR and Collections Manager available, Classic Client and the Role-Tailored Client and so forth. All right. And my apologies for not having this open. And there we go. Perfect. Okay, so what we've done is added into financial management an area called debt collection. And if we open it up, we'll see that we have a number of different functions. The AR and Collections Manager does not have this by default. This is specific to the AR and Easy, the combination one. But let's take a look and see what the functions are. So typically, we generate and update exceptions, which takes a couple of minutes. Depends on the size of the database, how long it takes. Larger databases obviously will take longer, and you may want to use a scheduler. So yeah, we can run that. Okay, so we run that as of today. And it runs through and it updates all of the exceptions with any payments, looks for any new exceptions, and be done. There we go. Okay, so now we've updated the list, and routinely the users are going to first generate once a day, or once every time they go in for collections activity, and then they'll open up the exception list. And the exception list has all of the overdue invoices. There's a lot of information in here. So you can see that we had a next contact date. There's the customers. These are invoices. If we slide over, we can see invoice dates, days late, due dates, amount remaining. If a partial payment has been made, you see the original amount and the remaining amount. Then we see the category, and it may be overdue, it may be an unapplied credit memo, it may be one of a variety of different types of documents. We also can handle short pays and write-offs, which we'll talk about because that's an important addition that we've added in about a year ago. So under normal circumstances, the next contact date, now I said before that the next contact date is automatically updated. So we're going to take a look and say, well, we've got Selangorian and we've got a couple invoices, so we're going to open up the customer data screen. So here we have a list of all of the overdue invoices that they've got. And we've got a customer, we've got the total amount of this particular exception, as well as the total open amount for the customer. They may be the same, or there may be some open invoices that are not yet overdue. Now, NAV has an awful lot of information available for collections purposes, but it's kind of scattered all over the countryside. So what we've done is, under the Navigate screen, is collect all of this information into one area so that you can review what's going on with this customer. So from here we can look at the NAV, and this is all native NAV, credit management. We can resend a customer statement. We can look at an aging report. We can open up the customer ledger entry table. We can jump to the customer card. If we have a specific invoice, we can open up the posted sales invoice. But we can also take a look at the contact event history. So if we have previously had contact with this, we can open it up and we can see who we spoke with, what they said, and if a payment has been made for this customer, then we'll see any payments that have been applied. Now, in this particular case, we're looking at the invoice 103018, which was what we specifically talked about before. Now, after having had reviewed all of the information so that you can see what's going on with this customer, we've looked at the history, we'll want to contact the customer. So there's contact information. We store all of the contact information that is specific to the collections area. This is not part of relationship management in NAV, if any of you are familiar with that. These are contacts that are specific to the accounting area and are not visible anywhere else. So in this case, we can say we want to create a new event. So we're going to contact Mary, and it automatically puts in the date, and we have a conversation with Mary. We're going to specify what the type of contact is. We'll set up a list of different activities that a user might want to do. This is specific to you guys. You might be sending a dunning letter that you want to record that you did, left a message, a voicemail, sent to outside collections, had a telephone call, whichever activity that you're recording, you'll specify here. And then you have a conversation with Mary. You ask her for payment on all of these overdue invoices, and Mary says, now we open up a comment screen. NAV has, this is a native NAV comment, and if you're familiar with NAV, it allows you to enter 80 characters and doesn't automatically have word wraps. So we entered in the ability that you can write in whatever you want. Spoke to Mary, and she said that she would make a payment next week on Monday. Okay? Click OK, and it creates the message. So now you have a record of the fact that you spoke with Mary. We're keeping a record of who had the conversation, who you spoke with, and what they've promised. So now, if they're making a payment against a specific invoice, you can record that they promised to make the payment against this invoice. So you see the list of open invoices, the original amount, the balance. On the other hand, it might be that she's making a general comment that you want to record against the account and not against a specific invoice. So we have a promise to pay date. When did she promise to make the payment? She said next Monday, so that's the 20th. Now, we've set it up automatically in our default system. We will always have a default next contact date. However, the next contact date is February 21st. She promised to make the payment on the 20th. The chances of us receiving the payment by the 21st is pretty slim. So we're going to give it an extra few days. She said she was going to make the payment on the 20th. We'll give her to the 24th before we're going to say she didn't do what she said she was going to do. And then the question is how much did she promise to pay? So let's say she promised to pay $20,000. Okay? So we click OK, and now we've recorded this information, and it stays in history. At this point, you're done with this contact, and you go back to the next one because it has automatically resorted and put this account down at the bottom. Okay? Set for a next contact date, which actually is probably up at the top because my dates are a little funky. So then you go on to the next one, and you repeat the process. You go into customer data, you review the outstanding invoices. There's a list of all the invoices. There's a list of everything you need to know. You review the information, and then you make contact, and you record the contact history. We have payment history. Now let's talk about write-offs. We have situations where, and I don't understand this, but customers for some reason seem unable to pay invoices exactly. I wish I could get away with it, but they leave remaining amounts. So now here we have a situation on Selengorian where they paid $279. The original amount was $279.57. They paid $279 even, leaving 57 cents. Now, is it worth having the collections for 57 cents? Now, this is something that individual companies will have to make a decision on whether or not they want to follow up. If they decide that this is just not worth the time and effort, they can say, we're going to write that off. So assuming that we have it's been paid short, we'll talk about that in a second, we can, and in fact, if we want, we can say, we want to see only the short pays, so equals yes. So these are the invoices that have been paid short. This one was a $5,000 invoice, and they paid all but $5,300. So now the question is do we want to collect that? If you do, then you leave it. If you don't, then you put a check mark here, and then when we say write off, the program is automatically going to create an entry in a specified journal that will exactly offset this and bring the balance to zero, so that you're able to keep your accounts receivable clean. This is something that has been extremely helpful. So, but when we hit the write-off function, what we don't do is post it. What we would do is we create the entry. So we're going to say we're going to go into the cash receipts, into the journal write-off, and the entries have been created. So now if we go over to the cash receipts journal, and we look at the write-off batch. What we've done is create a batch specifically for write-offs. This would not be something that the person who created the write-off would do. This would be somebody, a supervisory level review to say, yes, in fact, we're going to write this off. Yes, we'll write this off. nope, we're not writing this one off, we're going to collect it. So we'll just delete that line and then post this one, and it will set the balance on that invoice to 0. So writing off and keeping your accounts receivable clean is a whole lot easier than having to remember to go in and do them individually. Now, these are assigned to various different reps, okay? And let's take a look and see and start at the setup. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at who is in the collection system. If the user is not listed in the debt collection rep list, they will not be able to see any of that exception list. They'll be able to get into here, but they will not be able to go any farther. So now we want to say, do we want to allow our collections people to perform that write-off? If they're allowed to, then we can put a check mark by their name. We can also set a limit. How much are they allowed to write off? Now, write-offs are for small remainder amounts. If you're going to write off an invoice in its entirety, you should use a credit memo, which NAV has built in, and we can allow users access to creating credit memos right from the AR and collections screen. We take a look at levels. This is a hierarchy of reporting. So a level 1 person might be the CFO or the person that's ultimately responsible. Level 2s might be supervisor, and level 3s might be the people that are doing the work. Now, it may be that what has to happen is that a level 3 person, in this case Mary or Michael, runs into a question that they're unable to answer or make a decision on, so they can escalate it up to their boss by transferring that exception to them. So each one of the exceptions are assigned to a specific rep. Now, when we get into setup, originally when this was designed, this exception list was decided that collections information, even for collectors, is confidential information. And only the assigned rep, the responsible rep, should be able to see the fact that a particular customer has overdue information. Now, this can be set so that that's true, that if you're not the assigned rep, you won't be able to see this information, or, which we had several requests for, we can say, although we've assigned it to a specific rep, we want all reps to be able to see all overdue invoices. So this is a setup function, whether or not all reps can see all overdue invoices. If you uncheck this and now go into the exception list, you'll see a screen that didn't pop up. Now, since I'm a supervisor, I can see anything that for people that report to me. I'm the administrator and I'm a level 1 person. So as a level 1 person, I can see the exceptions for everybody that reports up the ladder. There are a number of things, of setup functions here that I don't have time to go through all of them, but default next contact date. You saw that when we created a contact, the system automatically set a next contact date. This is where you determine when the default next contact date will be. You also saw me change it because it was inappropriate to call the person to follow up on something, because we would not have received their check in time. So we can say you can change the next contact date, but there's a limit, and this is a company decision, that we are not going to allow you to change it more than 30 days. So we want to make sure that everybody gets contacted at least once a month, regardless of what they tell us about when they're going to make payment. This is how we knew that the cash receipts was where the write-off was going to to occur, and we'll talk about use reminder level in a second. Let's go to trigger points. And trigger points are the instruction of how does the system know at what point an overdue invoice is going to become an exception. So the question then is at what point do I want to start the collections activity? This is a global setup, and it applies to all accounts. So we've set here that the trigger point after due date, and it's always based on the due date of the invoice, is going to be 30 days. You can set this. I have some people that set it higher. I have some people that want to start the collections activity 1 day after the due date. Do we want to flag partial payments? Flagging a partial payment means that if an invoice is partially paid, it immediately becomes an exception, regardless of whether it's overdue or not, because a partially paid invoice is usually an indication that there's a problem with the invoice. Do we want to include unapplied payments? Yes, unapplied credit memos. If the person who normally posts the cash receipts is not available, or they can't figure out, they receive a payment from a customer and they can't figure out what to apply it against, the idea is to get the money in the bank and figure out the application later. So if there's some reason that they can't figure it out, it'll show up in the exception list as an unapplied payment, and then the conversation with the customer was, we received this payment but we have no idea what it's for. Could you help us so that we can make the proper application? If there are open credit memos and invoices that are overdue, you may want to say, listen, you have a credit memo with us. You have a credit with us. Would you like us to apply it against the invoice? Tracking extraordinary value invoices. This function allows people to treat exceptionally large invoices differently than regular invoices. And what constitutes a very large invoice will vary from company to company. But you can set it up so that exceptionally large invoices are in fact become exceptions even before the due date. So I have it set here as -2 days. So the conversation on an exceptionally large invoice might go along the lines of we see that there's a large invoice that's about to become due. We granted you special terms or whatever the conversation is. Can we expect that this will be taken care of, or is there anything that we need to discuss, because we would really not like to wait until this becomes overdue? So you can treat exceptionally large invoices differently than regular invoices. You can also make a determination as what's the minimum value of an invoice that you want your collectors to work with. This is my virus software popping up. So we've set it here that the minimum value that we want collections to deal with is $100. So if a customer has a $75 invoice, even if it's overdue, it won't show up in the list, unless the customer has multiple overdue invoices that consolidate to this number here. Then they all show up and they're tagged as small invoices. There's a number of other functions we've added in, which I'm not going to go over, but there is a whole another function that we built. Under normal circumstances, when people start off using the AR and Collections Manager, they'll set a fixed trigger point after the due date of the invoice. Once the AR has been, and people are used to using it, what we may want to do is set up payment classes. Payment classes recognize that customers' fortunes change over time, and what we really want to do is take a look at the average days late. So what we're going to do is calculate the average days late and set the trigger point for whether or not something's going to become an exception based on their days late. If they're on the average, they pay on time, we're going to give them more latitude than if they're chronically late. So we've set up 3 categories here. And if the maximum average days late is 5, then we're going to give them 30 days. If it's so less than 5, equal to or less than 5 days, we're going to give them 30 days before we're going to contact them on overdue invoices. If their average days late is less than or equal to 20 days, more than 5 but less than 20, equal to or less than 20, then we're going to contact them sooner. And if they're chronically late, that is more than 21 days late, we're going to contact them in 5 days. So periodically, and this would be something on the order of about once a month, we're going to calculate the payment class by running recalculate payment class, and it will automatically calculate the average days late and the average days to pay, which gets displayed on, let's take a look at Selengorian, on here. This is how we know what their average days late is and their average days to pay. So average days late is based on the invoice date, and average days to pay is based on the invoice due date, and the average days to pay is based on the invoice date. So you can get an idea of whichever function that you're using, you can get an idea what the customer's average days to pay is. You'll notice here, though, and we just reviewed the functions of the payment class, which is 1, 2, and 3. Now, for people that decide that they want to get both the AR and Collections Manager, which is all of this function, plus Easy PDF, we've added in some additional functionality which recognizes the fact that most people don't want to go through, most people that are in collections don't want to go through this functionality of looking at individual invoices, but prefer to look at exception summary by customer. So this is available if you have both Easy PDF and AR and Collections Manager. So I didn't run the routine. So let's run the routine, and we're going to recalculate payment classes. So it says we're going to look at only fully paid invoices in the last 24 months. We're going to ignore invoices that we're not going to ignore invoices that are in dispute or excessively late invoices. So the program goes through and calculates, and it says in the last 24 months we had total sales of $578,000. Each one of these customers has a total amount of sales during that period of time. And we're going to say that larger customers, in fact, customers that account for 80% of the total, we're going to call A customers. Let's go back to the setup, because what we've done is added this for category A. We're looking at the top 80%. For category B, we're looking at the next 15%. And for category C, we're looking at the bottom 5%. So if a customer accounts for less than 5% of the company's revenue, they will be a C account. So we go into the exception by summary by customer. And we're going to run that routine and apply this. So we see that we have A's, B's, and C's, depending on the volume that they represent. And then we're going to update the customer class. And now, instead of looking at individual invoices, we're going to see, and isn't this, so what, view all exceptions. There we go. So rather than seeing that we're individual invoices, we're going to see totals by account, and we have their class. So this is an A2. This means it's a larger customer that pays fair. Okay? These are C2s and C3s. The C2s and C3s, generally, you're not going to have collectors worrying about so much because they're looking at $822 as opposed to an A2, which has $216,000. So most collectors are going to be worried about the A's, A2s, 2s and 3s, and the B's. So what we've done is added the ability to send a reminder. And if you're not familiar with reminders, you should contact your rep to find out more about them, because they've been built into NAV for a very long time, that we can in fact say we're going to send out a reminder, and there can be various different levels. The first level reminder might be something along the lines of, it might have escaped your attention, but an invoice became due. You have a number of invoices. The second one might be, we tried to contact you, we need to hear from you as soon as possible. And a level 3 reminder might be, if we don't hear from you in 48 hours, you'll be visited by Guido. So in this case, we can see that we've sent out level 3 reminders to all of these accounts. And this is the date they got sent. So we could filter if we wanted and say, we want to say filter on class C3 and we can set a reminder level 4 if we have it set up, and then it'll create reminders. We don't have a template, so let's change this to 3. Create a reminder, and it will create a batch of reminders in EasyPDF that we can simply hit send. So EasyPDF has the ability to batch send customer statements, invoices, all kinds of things, and AR and Collections has the ability to identify overdue amounts, due dates, and so forth. So this is for those that have a combination of EasyPDF and AR and Collections Manager. There are several reports that we can show if you want to be able to view the collections history. So all of the contacts that you've had for various different customers, you can open up and print out a contact history report. So that's kind of an overview of the AR and Collections Manager. Again, simple to use. You run the generate and update exceptions routine every time before you go into the exceptions list, because you want to see what's newly overdue and you want to make sure that all payments have been properly applied. Then you're going to go into the exception list. This can be grouped by customer so that you can say these are all of the customers. A lot of information in here. Once you decide who you're going to call, you go into the customer data screen, view all of the overdue invoices, review your contact event history, and then make contact and record what your customer told you. Then go on to the next one. Simple to use. Simple to use. Okay, Abby, at this point, let's open it up and see if anybody's got any questions.
You know, Bob, at this point, we have not had any questions typed in. I just want to remind everybody that if you do have a question, go ahead and type it into that question box. Oh, we just got one come in here. Here it is. If you have a contact in NAV Contacts that you will be using in collection, does it allow you to copy and or sync with NAV's contacts?
Yes, it does. So if we go into the customer data screen and we go into the exception manager, let's go into, in fact, if we go to the contacts, there's your AR contacts. There is a function that says update from relationship management. So if you have NAV relationship management contacts, all you have to do is push this, and all of the contacts will be brought into the collections area. Good question.
Okay. If we have any other questions, go ahead and type them into that question box. And while we're waiting to check, I just want to remind everybody that you can view our webinar recording later today on our website, which is innovia.com. And Bob, it looks like at this point we do not have any further questions.
Okay, so one quick point I'd like to make. As you're looking at this manage customer exceptions and we see all of this, not only do we see this information, but we've added in an aging list in a fact box over on the right hand side, which you can click on and see the overdue invoices for that. This also gives you a view of all open orders that have not yet been posted. So there's a whole bunch of information in the fact boxes off to the side, in addition to all of the invoice information and all of the aging information. One other thing, for those that have Easy PDF in addition to the AR and Collections Manager, if you have a situation where the customer says, can you please resend, say, oh, I don't know, these 3 invoices. If we go over to the ledger entries, so we're going to only look at open ledger entries, and I say I want to resend this one, and this one, and this one, we say send selected to batch. The program will create a batch of those 3 invoices. It's going to consolidate them into a single email and add all 3 of them attached, and we say send batch. So right on the spot from that screen, you can tell your customer to go over to open their email up, because those invoices are coming to them immediately. So it's there's a number of functions that are very, very helpful for collections people. Okay, Abby, now I'm done.
All right, well, that seems to be all of our questions, Bob. So we want to thank everybody for attending today, and check out the recording later, and we hope to see you all on our next webinar.
Thank you very much, and my apologies for the setup.